Okay. All right. Good morning. Good morning to my microphone. And welcome to the most positive space and the positive morning of your week and hopefully your life. I'm going to do my best. We're going to talk about some funny stuff today, some interesting stuff, some annoying stuff, but all from a positive frame. This is how are we branding this? The Freedom Coffee live stream. And this is the space where we all come together. You throw your comments in the chat and we talk either on locals or as I'm going to be starting the Instagram now and YouTube. I think we're also on Facebook and a bunch of different platforms today. Throw your comments up here, and if you want to discuss them, we will. But we're going to focus on celebrating the freedoms that we have, that many places in the world would die to have the types of freedoms we have in Canada and the United States. And we're also going to talk about, different ideas, suggestions, what's happening in the world of increasing or expanding our freedoms in the future, and that's important. So good morning, Sonia, Megan, Beth, everybody. Thank you for being here. We already have some people popping in. So if I look tired or a little disheveled or whatever, I came home yesterday and my backhaul was a little bit delayed, and somebody decided that it would be an amazing idea to shut down the highway that connects the border with civilization. It was it was very frustrating. And, just as a little tip, for people who get frustrated, if you're in a smaller town or in a city, and you know how it's really annoying when a big tractor trailer is in the street and, it's kind of an obstruction, all that stuff. If you think you're annoyed, truckers are 10 times more annoyed. Like at least myself. I hate being in that scenario. The truck's designed for the interstate, right? It's designed for the highway. That's it. And as much as you're stressed, the trucker is also stressed and doesn't want to be here. And yesterday was, I was parked in front of, there's a whole long line of trucks on some road in front of Harley-Davidson Niagara, thinking, yeah, I think I understand why some people want an automatic truck. But anyways, I'm old school. My truck is still a 13-speed. Good morning, Wyatt, Azura, Melissa from Quebec. Thanks. I appreciate you all coming here. I'm not celebrating my human rights. All right. Well, I think what we're going to celebrate is kind of the freedoms that we have. And if you're new here, I'm going to contextualize that. We understand what's been going on in Canada and the Western world and these global organizations that are trying to disrupt, usually for either political, corporate, monetary gain. But, I've lived in a place where, I'll give an example, perfect example. Where I used to live, there was a kid who was dealing drugs in the neighborhood. And bad. I'm not a proponent of drug dealing. But he, a poor kid, pobres as they're called, and was too stupid, so he started dealing drugs. And the paramilitaries came to his house and told his family, if we see him dealing drugs again, he's going to be dead. And 2 weeks later, they found his dead body. Now, the kid was young. He was 16, 17 years old. Now, that's not an excuse for drug dealing. I get that. But when I talk about celebrating the freedoms that we have, we're not surrounded by paramilitaries, narcotraficos, mafia, which is also another problem in South America. And we don't have the same reprisal or repercussions from speaking out. Now, we understand that censorship is a problem, and we get that. And we're all going to address it. But I think we have a lot to celebrate. And we are in the freest societies in the world, and that's why you're seeing this conflict. That's why people are getting angry and speaking up, because they're fed up. And we have the ability to do that. Alberta, Calgary, Darcy. We're in Calgary, you from? Despite the fact that, I'm going to mention this comedian, despite the fact that I am from Toronto and from Ontario, My whole life I had family in Calgary, so I was going to Calgary from, I don't know, the age of 3 years old, and half my family was from Alberta, was from Winnipeg, and so I have actual some deep roots in Western Canada, despite being in Toronto myself. Anyways, so I started my day with I didn't get home until 1:30 or 1:30 at night. Because it's so lovely when somebody cuts off the highway from civilization, which adds 3 hours to your trip home. But anyways, but you needed the truck time. Well, okay, so yeah, I needed the truck time. Just explain how trucking works. You make money as the wheels are turning. You're not making money when you're just sitting there in traffic, which is another reason truckers hate going into city centers unless they're city drivers. Leave me alone, he keeps freezing. I'm sorry. I don't know, this is an encoder I started using a few when I started this. It seems to be pretty good. Upstate New York, Sue, that's where I was yesterday. I was driving across from Syracuse back to Buffalo, back into Canada, like I often do. So if you're on Instagram, you have to check out this Instagram. This Instagram account is great. Is Kopke613, so it's Kopke 613. I guess that's his name, but I might have branded that a little bit simpler, because when you just say Kopke, people don't know if it's a K or a C. But anyways, the guy is hysterical. He kept me, I woke up, slept in a little bit, obviously, and that popped up, and the guy kept me laughing forever. He did this video on the different names of people in different cities in Toronto. And I put it on my, I don't know, I know nothing about Instagram. I put it on my feed or something, whatever it is. Stories, I guess. Watch it. It's so funny. It makes fun of people from Ontario, but I'm good with that. That's fine. I understand how people in Western Canada feel about Toronto, that we always think we're the center of the world, which most of us don't, but the political class does. That's a different story. But anyways, he's an amazing follow. If you were watching on Saturday night, I hope you enjoyed the, we did for those who don't know, it's buffering a lot. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I can't do tech support while I'm streaming. But what happens, Sonia, is I've noticed when it happens, that when it buffers, eventually it kicks back in, and then the actual downloaded stream is perfectly smooth. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so anyways, Saturday night, and Sonia, you were there, so thank you for being there. We did this live stream where we watched, for those of you who don't know the context, there was the Punchy McGregor, who is the CTV anchor, I guess, activist. He calls himself a journalist, but come on, we know he's not. He's the bald guy who used to work in a strip joint and was pushing people around when Tamara was let out of jail, and was my stalker in Ottawa, hanging out in front of my hotel room until Salmon told him to take a hike, and we had to call the security and the hotel management from the Sheraton to throw him out on his lying ass. It was an amazing moment in Canadian journalism, by the way. Anyways, Punchy McGregor did a documentary on the Freedom Convoy, and it was nobody obviously watched it. So what I thought we could do, since I've been doing this stream now for about a month or so and starting to get into the groove, is I said, why don't we get together on a Saturday night, get some drinks or some beer or whatever you want to do, let's all get together and watch it together. And I'm going to dissect from my perspective, having been there kind of behind the scenes. He was stalking me in my hotel room, and do my best to pick apart that documentary. It ended up being a couple of hours long, but it was a lot of fun for those of you who were there. And thank you for joining it. Check it out. It's I think it was a lot more informative than I thought. Like, I was a little bit worried going into it. Like, oh, what am I going to really say? But at the same time, I've read so many books on on marketing techniques, marketing strategies. You know, he's being involved in small businesses, and I was involved in graphic design for so much, so I could pick up on a lot of the video cues that they were using in different contrasts and lighting and sound, also from producing podcasts. So you could see how deceptively everything was edited. And the part where Salman Sema handed Punchy his ass was absolutely hysterical. So check that out. And for those of you who were there, I hope you liked it. And if it was good, I have something else in mind that we can do again in the near future, next week, the week after, something like that. Maybe a positive view of the Freedom Convoy, because a bunch of people obviously have reached out to me over the time, and one guy specifically, his family are all liberals, and he did a video that I've posted a few times, and he did it for his family, to show his family this is what really went on, because his family wouldn't listen to him about the Freedom Convoy, and he was there. So he finally sat down his father and said, "Dad, just watch this with me." And it was an hour long. He said, "I made this video, watch it with me." And he watched it with his dad, and I guess at the end, his dad was really emotionally taken by it, at least from my understanding, and turned to him and said, "I'm sorry for everything I said about the Freedom Convoy. I can't believe how I was lied to." And that was Punchy McGregor. And that also is going to be the framing of my book coming up. So manuscript is just about done. It might be, we're a couple of days late, but it's going to give a whole behind the scenes, what was going on from the beginning through, you know, coming across the country, and then all the stuff behind the scenes in Ottawa. And it's not just going to be, I mean, yeah, it's my narrative, obviously, and I try to stick to it to being as factual as possible. But we did reach out to many other people and get their takes and their experiences. Dave from Live from the Shed, for example, is one of them. And there's a chapter on him and a whole bunch of other things. And it's all positive. I didn't want to get into all the negative aspects. There's a little bit sprinkles here and there, because there might be something to follow up a project that we're going to be working on. And I will be talking more about incidences in the book in my Substack after the book is released. But the whole thing should leave you with a good, positive vibe, because I want this to be an historical record of the Freedom Convoy and not the nonsense narrative that the government is trying to put forward. And not just the government, but people in the political class, you know, outside of the ruling government right now, that are trying to, I think they're really trying to tarnish the reputation, whether it's intentionally or intentionally, I don't know. But I promise you, it's going to be as accurate as humanly possible, to the point that, as John and I, who are working on it together, said, we're trying to make every single word have meaning and be accurate as best we can. So, Azura Freedom Convoy was one of the best moments in Canadian history. I think it's going to be seen as a pivotal moment, not just in Canadian history, but in world history, because this is where things started to change. If you remember, before Freedom Convoy, we were going in the opposite direction. Doug Ford had his lockdowns. They were considering provincial passports to be expanded to grocery shops and pharmacies. That's when I kind of hit the roof. And Arrivecan was in full swing, and we're going to have more and more boosters, right? After a week or so, you could see the political parties started testing messaging, realizing that, maybe this polling data we're getting is completely fraudulent, and people don't like to be living in a communist society. So anyways, and yesterday, by the way, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, was a pivotal moment, because, you know, sometimes how we envision a win will look like, it's never how it transpires. It always comes down the pipeline in a different manner. And I think the Freedom Convoy and our goals of ending the mandates and ending the Arrivecan app is a perfect example. Because what happened yesterday? Yesterday, what did the government do? They got rid of Arrivecan and the mandates, or at least they're going to do it in 3 days or something. They announced that they're getting rid of it. I think that's a win. I think that's a win. Now, yeah, it didn't happen while the trucks were parked in front of Parliament Hill, because politicians are always weasels, and they have to save face as though they didn't cave to any sort of, political pressure. But we know that's exactly why. And it's so funny. The CBC, I love the CBC's headline. Always trying to spin it in a positive way for the blackface regime. The most racist regime to hold office in Canadian history, by the way. CBC, the Arrivecan app is about to become optional. Will anyone use it? Yeah, it's about to become optional. You talk about a reframe. Like, I like helping people reframe things as positivity, so I can tell that's exactly what they're doing. It should say, the Arrivecan app is a total failure. Government is backing down. That's what would have happened in generations in the past, or at least have that sort of frame to it. Your commentary was enjoyable and entertaining. The video itself was disgusting and full of lies. Oh, discussing the Punchy McGregor documentary. You got to watch it. It's so funny. I thought it was hysterical, and I didn't watch the documentary before, so I didn't know what I was going to see, and it was great. Anyways, so. But what's interesting, I'm noticing, not just in this CBC headline, but all these other headlines about the Arrivecan being dropped. Why are all these headlines omitting Freedom Convoy? I don't understand that. As though the Freedom Convoy isn't what paved the path for all of this, and none of this would have happened if it weren't for the Freedom Convoy. I think we all kind of understand that. So why is that being omitted from all these headlines? It just seems intentionally deceptive. And this is not left or right wing. I'm seeing this all over the place. That Justin Trudeau is backing down. I mean, I think there should be. Where's the headline to say the Freedom Convoy victory? The government of Canada finally removes its mandates and Arrivecan app after months of political pressure starting from the Freedom Convoy. Like, that's the headline. That's what it should be saying. I don't know. Just, I don't know. I think it's obvious to everybody that that's what happened. And then, the other thing is just, I'd hate to disappoint some people. And we all have the ability to fall into our own echo chambers. And we all have the ability, are subjected to confirmation bias. And I get it. All of us do, right? And we all have different biases depending on where we live, what we work in, the industries we are, our families around them. That's fine. But then there's the lawyer bias, right? What's the lawyer bias? Oh, Justin Trudeau dropped the Arrivecan because of some legal case that is going through the court system. No. Since when has Justin Trudeau had anything more than contempt for any ruling against him? Remember all those, everybody was crowing about all the, the ethics commissioner? He kept having all these violence. What do you do? He ignored it. Any sort of ruling he gets, guess what? He's just going to ignore it because he's a narcissist. And the little team around him are all narcissists. So they just think, well, we're in charge. It doesn't matter what the courts say because we're in charge of the courts. So they don't care what a court ruling is or court procedure. They're just going to override it. The reason it was dropped, I'll tell you the reason. It's because his poll numbers are imploding and donations to the Liberal Party are imploding. That's why they dropped it. Because even people who are, there are people in the Liberal Party who are reasonable. And I know some of them. And I'm always like, well, what are you doing in that party? And it's I don't know. Often it's business relationships and business partnerships and whatever, which I guess I'm a little bit sympathetic to. But those people, even they're done. They're done with Justin. During the convoy, they were trying to put together some sort of, I guess it's a non-confidence vote because there were 33 MPs in the Liberal Party that were trying to form a coalition within the party to oust blackface because they think he's destroying the reputation of Canada, the legacy of the Liberal Party, the legacy of his father, which I don't think was all too great anyways, but whatever. They had their own, which is why, he just went full Super Saiyan on the truckers and froze all of our bank accounts, mine included, And by the way, freezing bank accounts and assets, so bank accounts, credit cards, lines of credit, corporate bank accounts, insurance, all of that frozen because the government was trying to starve us. So the government of Canada did what the Iranian mullahs do to people. Actually, no, I don't think they would even do that. They wouldn't cut people off from their bank accounts. But so Trudeau doesn't care what the courts say. Trudeau cares about, oh, damn, my poll numbers have collapsed and I'm an embarrassment all over the world. And I think what's it called? That's the other legacy out of the Freedom Convoy, is that the entire world now sees Trudeau in a different light. And I saw it in real time. Because when I left Ottawa on March 12th, I went to Florida because I went to speak at I was invited to speak at the Bitcoin conference about what Bitcoin did to get, it's the only money that got to truckers, by the way, was the Bitcoin money got directly to the truckers, which is why they asked me to speak there. And then I went down to Colombia because I had a broken leg. And what am I going to do? Freeze here? I might as well go just stay with friends and recover there. And I saw it in real time. The reputation of Trudeau just collapsing in Latin America. So we'll see. Is there proof of the MPs seeking coalition to oust Trudeau? Of course not. Of course not. They're not going to do that on the record. They never will, because that would be the end of their political careers, right? And I wasn't speaking directly to them. I was speaking to them through a conduit that, again, is off the record, quiet. But, it kind of, you do what you can to try to move things along. So, unfortunately, Greg, I guess you can't really write a story about that. If I could speak more openly about it, I would. But I do want to help people, and they're going to give me the liberal smear. I'm not. But I do want to help people in the Liberal Party who want to get rid of the extremists and the communists and whatever, and go back to just being corrupt liberals. If you just go back to being corrupt liberals and the conservatives focus on being conservative and stop trying to be liberals, then the world will go back. I think the world will go back to normal, at least somewhat. I mean, it kind of is going back to normal already. I think we're good. I wanted to report on it so bad. Dude, I know. Honestly, Greg, you know how many things I know that I could give you stories that would just blow your mind? But, you need a source that you can name. Otherwise, we don't want to be like the New York Times or all the leftist smear merchants. It's just like, according to sources, right? Like, we don't want to do that. So, and I know you don't want to do that, which is why. By the way, Diverge Media, thank you for following on the National Telegraph. Diverge Media is also a great platform. Greg works really hard. Him, Mark Petroni, there's a whole bunch of people on this side of the political aisle that want to focus on objectivism and truth, and thanks for everything you do. Better politicians on both left and right is better for Canadians. Exactly. If we could just go back to the NDP being workers' rights and elderly people, the Liberal Party being corrupt because they work both sides, but whatever it is, and the Conservatives to being actual conservatives, at least it allows us the opportunity to say, okay, well, I don't like, 40% of that party, but I'm going to vote for them this time versus the others, right? And I'm not saying, by the way, to Conservatives, you should vote Liberal, especially if you're in Alberta. Like I said before, I grew up with family in Alberta. I don't think anybody in Alberta should ever vote for any Liberal Party, but that's just me. But anyways, and so when it's not any legal case that caused Trudeau to drop these mandates and the Arrivecan app. It's the fact that the swing voters who are voting Liberal are done with him, right? The people who are like, well, I don't like Conservatives. They're too right-wing for me. So I'll hold my nose and vote for Justin Trudeau, kind of like the people who voted for Biden, which they're like, oh, yeah, Biden is the reasonable guy. I'm like, yeah, how do you like it now, right? So it's the same sort of effect that's going on. Thanks for the chat. Anytime, Greg. My pleasure. I'm going to get to all the comments. If you have any specific questions, let me know. The Bernie Peckford hearing, that was actually Rupa. So Rupa Subramania, I always forget how to pronounce her name, who was one of the legacy media, or at least she's I guess she's an independent journalist who also works for Legacy Media. She came on behalf of the National Post to our official press conferences at the Freedom Convoy. And Rupa is the one who actually uncovered that story. She's the one who found all the documents, and nobody in the Canadian media covered it other than, Jordan Peterson interviewed her on his channel, and the National Telegraph, and maybe Diverge Media, I'm not sure, but that's really, that's the source for it. So anyways. And the other thing is, and sometimes I get this from a lot of friends who are conservative, like, what do you mean? What moderates are there in the Liberal Party, right? Because they support Trudeau. And I just respond with, how many people do you know in your family who don't know what's going on, right? We all know people at our work, at our family, friends of friends, whatever. They have no clue what's going on politically around the world right now. And in terms of the culture war, and those are the people who are still like, I don't like conservatives. I don't like Justin, but I'm more liberal. My wife votes liberal, so I'm just going to vote for them. There's a lot of that goes on. So those people are abandoning Trudeau. Even they're fed up at this point. So that's why they're dropping the mandates in the app. All right. So a couple of comments. Beth is typing up a storm here on Locals. By the way, to come to the book launch, which will be sometime soon. I think we're going to announce it by the end of the week, I hope. We're going to announce the date. That is going to be in Toronto. And I did have somebody ask about Alberta. If there's enough people that would like me to come out and do an event and a book launch with you guys there, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. So if there is... if there's enough people who want me to come out there, I'll do it. I would be honored to do it, to be entirely honest. But the actual book launch we're doing now, or at least the first one, if there's more than one, is going to be in Toronto. So if you want to come to the book launch, and you're going to want to, I think, because we're still trying to finalize the roster of who is going to be there and speaking and in attendance, you gotta be. We're gonna triage because I know there's gonna be it's gonna be a small venue. It's gonna be in a really nice kind of boutique bar. I'm friends with the people who own it. They got a big room in the back, lots of drinks, party atmosphere. It's gonna be lots of fun. This is not going to be your typical stiff upper lip, English lit group of people reading a chapter out of a book. There's a place and a time for that. The spirit of the Freedom Convoy is not that. I want the book launch to be the spirit of the Freedom Convoy. What do we have in the Freedom Convoy? We had dancing on the streets, right? So that should be the tone of what we're going to do. We may have some live podcasting and some interviews and conversations and that sort of stuff. So we need to triage because there's only 200. Well, I think now there's 184 spots because people involved in putting it together and putting together the book, and people have been doing test reads for us. You have to for tier 1 of the triage is for people who are members of the honkingforfreedom.locals.com community, which is where I'm streaming this on Locals. Why am I doing that? Because it's a free speech platform, and I know eventually this may start to deal with censorship issues. So if you go to Locals, and I'm going to have eventually exclusive Locals content. So tier 1, those people will have the opportunity to get a ticket to the live to the book launch. And there's 300, 400, 500 people in there, something like that. The next tier are people who subscribe to my Substack, which is BJdichter.substack.com. There's about 100,000 people who subscribe to that newsletter. And so if we don't sell out in the first few hundred people, then it'll go to the Substack subscribers. So join to one of those two to get tickets to the event. And then if there are leftover tickets after that, then we'll distribute them to the public somehow. Okay. The other topic I wanted to get into is might upset some of you, but I made a commitment to everybody from day one, and this is just how I am, to always tell the truth, irrespective of whether we like the truth or not. We're not going to be like the lefties and always slip into cognitive dissonance. We're going to listen to people, and if we agree or disagree, whatever, but we can talk about this sort of stuff together. So I want to talk about what's been happening this week. In terms of what I call the useful idiots. Now, I don't mean that as a swear word. Idiot used to be a swear word, but I don't think it is anymore. At least when I was a kid, it was. But I want to talk about it from the political term. For those of you who know who Yuri Bezmenov is, when he discussed, the KGB would identify useful idiots in the community that would help further their initiatives and not knowingly do so, right? Useful, therefore, idiots. And this week, and in this context, this would be people who end up helping Trudeau or helping the radical left and think they're not. And this week we saw a little bit of that. We saw this guy, Jeremy, who this Diagolon, this fake terrorist organization or whatever it was. I don't know. I know a little bit about that part of it. But he made some comments about Pierre's wife, and I knew he was all down on Jewish conspiracies, but I didn't know he had rape fantasies. I mean, that's really freaking crazy. Like, yikes, buddy! Like, it's like the mouth isn't attached to the brain. Really, so firstly, this whole Diagolon thing and whatever, like, oh, this is funny. Listen, I like a prank like anybody else. And I hope this teacher in Oakville with the big prosthetic breasts, I hope that's a prank and the guy is actually conservative. By the way, little tidbit, apparently a year ago, he was the most anti-woke teacher in the school. That's right. I think this is a prank. And if it's a prank, he's my hero. Like, that is brilliant. That is so good. I can imagine he comes out and say, yeah, this is what I've been yelling about in education for years. That would be absolutely brilliant. So that's an example of somebody, if that's the case, using their brain to draw attention to an issue. But this person, he has, I've known of this person for a couple of years. He was quite fascinated with me for whatever reason. He's done a bunch of, well, I think we know politically, but he made a bunch of statements during the Freedom Convoy about me, trying to throw me under the bus, as well as a few others. Randy Hillier was doing the same, so clearly they were working in coordination with each other to try to undermine the people who were trying to do their best to lead the Freedom Convoy despite all the pressures that we were under, right? One of the pressures we were under is, God forbid if something happens and things in any way get violent. That's why we needed to focus on getting everybody away from anxiety and focusing on a party and being peaceful and all that sort of stuff. But those people on the side were always kind of, trying to turn this into a negative thing and attacking the people who are leading the Freedom Convoy. It's like, why, dude? Why would you do that? Like, that only is going to help Trudeau. That's all that's going to do. Why would you do that? But anyways, it is what it is. But, I've known of this guy, tangentially off to the side for a few years. He came on my radar maybe 3 years ago. A woman I know who is a YouTuber, he was quite aggressively harassing her online, and he was extremely cruel. This is somebody who had come to Canada as a refugee many, many years ago, has become, fully Canadian, embraced Canadian culture, and was trying to warn Canadians as to the dangers of, the types of people that she escaped from, and just to kind of red pill Canadians as to what's going on. And what did he do? He attacked her numerous times and told her, go back to your country. So that's the kind of attitude that he is. I understand. I know there's people who have certain sentiments, but you don't do that to people. Like, there are people who try to subvert Canada, and I get that. You don't do that to people who are trying to help, right? And who are doing so at their peril and putting themselves at greater risk. So that just goes to show it's just, for him, it's just a dick swinging contest is all it is. He also has been, obsessed with with Jewish conspiracies, which is like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't really care. People can do and believe and think whatever they want. Somebody sent me this this brilliant commentary from him that Schindler's List is just it's fake. It never happened. It's a fictional novel. None of this ever happened. Like, oh God, you got to be the stupidest person on the planet. Like the most documented. Why are some of these people obsessed with the most documented genocide in human history? I don't see them doing that about Rwanda. I don't see them going back to Pol Pot and saying, "Oh, the numbers are inflated" or whatever. Like, what is this? But he made a statement recently on one of his streams, like, "Oh, this guy," referring to me. He never reached out to me and never talked to me. I'm like, yeah, because your brain is not attached to your mouth. You say stupid shit, and that's why. Part of my language, but anyways. But the problem with people like that, too, is that it negatively impacts everybody around them, right? That's why I stay away from people like that. I think everybody has the right to say whatever they want, right? Everybody can say, I'm a free speech absolutist. But at the same time, people have the right of free speech to respond or ignore it or whatever. Now, in my case, this has been going on for a long time. I've never responded. And I've had people ask me repeatedly, why don't you respond? Or you should do defamation, you should do this. And I said, no, because people like this dig their own graves. It's only a matter of time until he's going to put his big foot in his big mouth and destroy himself. And these people will never go away entirely, but they'll destroy all the credibility and goodwill that they've had. So aside from the spreading rumors during the Freedom Convoy, trying to undermine us, that we're all under so much pressure during the Freedom Convoy to keep everybody, not only keep everybody safe, which was the primary concern, and keep everybody happy and enjoying themselves, but this was also a political movement. And then we had all these other groups that were trying to sabotage us. And it was just, that's why you're going to like the book. And I promise it's the positive spin on all of this stuff. But these people, they'll open their mouths and they'll dig their graves and they'll pull down the people around them. And, despite the warnings that I gave to a couple of people, and I tend to sit by the side and just watch, right? But some people will come up to me and ask. And I just suggested that you may want to be a little bit more careful around people like that because they're going to ruin your reputation, the reputation of your organization, whatever. So I was shocked when he was appointed either an executive or a board member of this Veterans for Freedoms thing. And I thought, like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? What do you guys go back and look at the archive of some of the things that he's done? And I'm not even talking about the harassment of Iman online but like just some crazy stuff, really crazy stuff. And I understand he's trying to do it partially in jest and partially as humor, but there's a good part of it that's not, and that's the part that's concerning. So he got involved with Veterans for Freedom. He did a number of interviews with James Topp, all these organizations that seem to be getting money from the same people, by the way. And they all started gathering around this useful idiot. And I noticed on Twitter when I was driving, I was on I-90, just past Syracuse, driving back to Canada. And I have on my truck, I have 3 phones and a GPS, don't ask why. But on one of my phones, I had my Twitter feed. It's mounted kind of right, I have my phone, but I clicked on the Twitter feed because I got a notice or an alert. And it was the James Topp group, the marching guys. Made a statement or put a Twitter post that were, horrified by the statements of Jeremy McKenzie. McKenzie's last name, right? And will be issuing a statement. Well, yeah, duh. I tried to tell everybody, but nobody listened, right? Nobody listens to the PR and communications guy who has a background in it because they all know better, right? And well, what are they going to do? Say, oh, well, we didn't like him. Well, you know what? You've already invested in him. You've already gone down that path. You can't walk that back. So it was really, it was disappointing, but for me at the same time, it's kind of like, proving my point. That's why for all these months, I said nothing about all his attacks on me and smears on me and whatever, because it was only a matter of time, because he's going to dig his grave, he's going to throw himself in it, and he's going to pull everyone around him into the grave with him. And that's predictably what he's done. But the important thing is free speech. That this is why free speech is so important and so essential. And people in various communities, my community, don't get it. They don't understand it. And it's so infuriating. It's because of free speech, even with the censorship, and I understand this guy has been deplatformed on most platforms, which is unfortunate, because when you have free speech, the rest of us get to see who the lunatics are. That's how it was so easy for me to predict where he was going to go and how he's going to, well, not specifically how, that he eventually would dig his own grave and pull everybody down with it, because I had heard him speak. I could see the brain wasn't connected to the mouth, and I'm like, okay, it's only a matter of time, right? But free speech is what allows that. And if we don't have free speech, then we don't know who are the people who have, just confused interpretations of history, which sometimes you can talk to those people. I've tried with some people with some success in the past and some not. We also have this problem. Many of us are concerned about people who are subversive to Canadian values and to what Canada is. And they now have to talk around issues. But if we have free speech, the American style, then they can speak openly and we can see what it is. Like, do you remember, I remember learning about this in school when, was it the ACLU? I think it was the ACLU in New York in the late 70s, protected the free speech rights of some neo-Nazi group, which no longer exists because none of them really exist anymore. Protected their rights to have a parade and a demonstration in New York. I don't know if it was a Jewish area or not a Jewish area. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not into identity politics. But protected their rights to do so, and they did. And that's where we got to go, right? And the other thing is, when you hear people speak in their entirety, you get to understand their philosophy. So this particular guy, Jeremy Mackenzie, Mackenzie, it's written right there. Thanks, guys. He's not right-wing. I'd hate to tell you. He's not. He's left-wing. He's a far lefty. He's a left-wing identitarian. He is exactly what Black Lives Matter is on the other side. He doesn't know it because his ability to think critically and about philosophy, I think is, I shouldn't say that. He's sometimes, he can be quite articulate sometimes. And in his defense, he's said some accurate statements about Trudeau and some of the things that have occurred in our society the past few months. But, a broken clock is right twice a day. But he's a far leftist. He's a racial identitarian, just like BLM. The difference is, just like Justin Trudeau is a better example. He's exactly like Justin Trudeau. The difference is Justin Trudeau is a racial identitarian with an outgroup preference. This guy and the people like him, that little group, they're racial identitarians with an in-group preference. But the underlying philosophy is exactly the same thing. They have the exact same worldview. And then on the few times people have sent me over the past his views on political issues and whatever, he's for social constructionism, right? Like, he wants protection of the white race. What is that? That's exactly what BLM is. That's what leftism is, right? Right wing is market forces. Right wing is merit-based, based on your abilities, right? That's not what he wants. He's advocating based on racialized lines, exactly like the far left. And I find it amazing when you run into these people. There's a couple little kids like that too here. Who's that kid, that idiot in the U.S.? Nick Fuentes. And maybe because I've spent so much of my life in Latin America, this Latino who's LARPing as a white supremacist. Like, what an idiot. He's a far leftist. It's the same thing. It's the same cancer that they have. They're not right-wing. They're not objective. They want social constructionism based on racial boundaries. But they should be allowed to speak, and the rest of us should be allowed to either ignore it or challenge it. And when you see people who are measured and calm and can challenge that sort of idiocy, then those sorts of movements die. And that's why the ACLU was protecting the right of neo-Nazi groups in New York in the 70s. And those lawyers, by the way, most of them were Jewish, and they got a lot of flack from their own community. But they obviously were understanding the long game, that let crazy people speak, because most people are reasonable and most people want positivity. Most people don't want anger. Like you see this out of the media all the time. The media is all about anger and attacks, and now our Trudeau is doing that. That's why Trudeau's poll numbers are collapsing. That's why he's a lame duck and his political career is over, because he's switched from trying to sell us on this narrative of positivity. Remember sunny ways? It was all fake. It was disingenuous, but we're used to that because all politicians are disingenuous. But now he's gone to complete darkness. You can see how dark and angry Justin Trudeau is. Another person who's like that is Doug Ford. I mean, Doug Ford is the one who sought the injunction on the Give, Send, Go money for the Freedom Convoy. So if you donated to Freedom Convoy, the person you're angry at is Doug Ford, not Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau brought in the Emergency Measures Act and froze our bank accounts. That's what Justin Trudeau did. But the freezing the money, that was Doug Ford. And you can see that in Doug Ford, too. He's a very angry, a very dark person. He's very disingenuous. That's why when you watch him, remember he was doing those daily COVID things, and he looked like a mortician, because he's completely incongruent from the personality that he has. And none of these people are good actors in any way, shape, or form, and none of them are persuasive. Some of the least persuasive people in society are actors. Wow, I got so many comments to go through. Anyways, so I was glad to see that I've been glad. I don't want to go all Schadenfreude. I don't wish these people any ill will. This guy, Jeremy, as well. I hope he gets help. Perhaps he has PTSD. I'm not sure. He was with part of a group of people several years ago who I knew a couple of the people there. You could tell they were the type of people that they weren't terribly well educated in the philosophical sense, right? Like the tradespeople, they're tradespeople, but they really didn't have any. Philosophy was clearly a class they never took. But I could tell with a couple of them that deep down they're good people. Like they weren't cruel people down there. So deep down. So I remember I got to know one of them, I think pretty well, and I could tell he's a guy very emotional, has a good heart, really upset, really concerned with what's going on in Canada right now. And these sorts of groups, these online groups, and we see them all the time in all these Facebook groups that we're all part of. It's kind of like when you have an employee. And what happens when you have a group of employees? They adapt the worst habits of your worst employee, if you have a really bad one, right? Those of us who've owned businesses or managed teams or managed Facebook groups have seen that, where there's one person who's just toxic and is just cancer, and that spreads to everybody else. That's what this guy Jeremy did to this group of online people who started building platforms. And what happened? They all got deplatformed. I think they're on alternative platforms right now, which is good. That's why we need alternative platforms. But the censorship then leads to echo chambering, and some of these alternative platforms just becomes an echo chamber of a bunch of people spewing really toxic and negative nonsense, which is, for me, that's not what I want to be a part of. I want to be part of a movement and something like what I tried to do with Freedom Convoy. And the messaging that was the one thing that Tamara and I always connected on, was our embrace on positive energy and the importance of it. She's extremely spiritual, more so than I am, but we are both in that headspace of when you start your day with positivity and you're utilizing the positive frame to look at the challenges in your life, then you can overcome anything, and everything becomes either a challenge or something that requires a solution. And it was, that's why those 4 words are what I wanted to brand everywhere. Every Twitter post, every press release we did, I made sure we got to put that in there. Every press release, every communications, everything was peace, love, freedom, and unity, because that was the spirit of the Freedom Convoy. And I think that's going to be the spirit of what is going to be, I hope, Canada's identity in the future, along with free speech. And some concealed carry laws would be great as well. But, one thing at a time. Peace, love, freedom, unity. BJ did a good job. Thank you, Beth. Oh, Kiss Junkie, you're back. Kiss Junkie, by the way, Kiss Junkie is here on Locals. She really had an amazing effect on me the other day. And this was an example I gave, I think last time or the time before, about reframing. We're just ending the stream, and Kiss Junkie comes up, and she posts a comment that just before Freedom Convoy, can I say what happened? Maybe I shouldn't. I'm not going to say specifically, but something really, really, she said, yeah, okay. So she said, I lost my son to fentanyl. And I don't know the circumstances beyond that, but I felt, horrible. I felt, like we're complaining about, politics and this and that, but those are the real things that, I don't know. I didn't know what to say. So, but my endeavor to always try to, look at the positive frame or look at the solutions or whatever. The first thing that popped into my head was Scott Adams, who talks about fentanyl all the time because he lost his stepson to fentanyl in 2018, I think it was, 2018 or 2019. And Scott had reached out to me, or we had communicated over, I think, Instagram or Twitter, one of them. I think both, actually, a couple of times. So I posted a thing on Twitter and tagged Scott Adams and then sent him a private message, and he retweeted it, because that's a fundamental issue for him. Why are our politicians not talking about fentanyl, despite the fact that it's killing hundreds of thousands of people a year, and it's all coming from, China's producing it, and it's going to the cartels, right? So I connected them, and she came back to me the next day, and she said, I've spoken to my daughter. Thank you for doing it, for posting that tweet and connecting us, and we're putting something together. We have an action plan, and we're going to go forward, and we're going to turn this negative experience into a positive experience, and we're going to do something for people. That's the spirit of the Freedom Convoy. That's what it was about. And Kiss Junkie, I was so happy when you said that, and I mentioned that to Scott. And that's what I want all these spaces to be. That's why I talk about, this is the most positive space of our stream of your day, or at least of your morning. Yeah, hopefully until tomorrow. Because if we start with this positive frame, at least for me and other people that I've worked with, when you start from a positive frame, no matter what gets thrown at you, it doesn't bother you. Like the other day, by the way, I got summoned to speak at the Commission on the Emergency Measures Act at some point. So, when you start with in a positive frame and you receive a summons from the government, like, okay, well, that's just another thing that's going to go on the to-do list. We'll take care of it, and I'll do it. And you're still in that positive sphere. So I think if we continue doing all of that together, that's what's going to lead to the demise of Trudeau and the blackface era, and Doug Ford eventually as well. And we can move forward in being more positive, more loving towards one another, And that's how we're going to invoke positive change. And the other thing, I've recommended to people is, I know we like to get into our echo chambers on, left versus right, conservative, liberal. I think it's important everybody has at least a few friends who disagree with them politically, just so you can understand the other side. That's why I was, I utilized certain strategies during the Freedom Convoy, because I understand the left, because I have friends I have a lot of friends who are center. I have some friends who are a little bit, too left for my liking, but I know how to communicate to them. And that's why I had, people who were former liberals, people who were former NDP, people who were NDP school trustees communicating with me in Twitter spaces during the Freedom Convoy on how we all have to come together and start to love each other together and focus on our freedoms and supporting one another, irrespective of small political divides that we have amongst each other, right? For example, Wyatt is here in the chat. I am not a Christian conservative. Wyatt is very much a so-called Christian conservative. And I love the guy. And I will do everything I can to make sure his voice and his opinions are always heard and respected, whether or not you agree with him or not. And I think that's the path forward for all of us. So, BJdichter.substack.com. I don't have any questions or comments today. I was a little bit of scrambling to get here. David says free speech is essential. Fascists deny freedom of speech, of course. Religion and assembly. As George Carlin, you're talking my language. George Carlin once said, all fascism comes to America. It will come in the form of a smiley-faced fascism. 100%. And a perfect example, George Carlin is somebody who I really probably disagreed with many of his political views, but his philosophical views on freedom, I'm 100% on board with him. It's in my contention that we are experiencing liberal fascism in Canada and globally. Yeah, liberals are no longer liberal. And I wonder if part of it is to blame on our side, on the conservative side, because think about it, how many times we've tried to put liberals and progressives, which is where the cancer has grown, in the same box. And we haven't allowed liberals to have an out to say, hey, we're not with them, because maybe our right-wing media, I'm not sure, always puts them in the same category, and it kind of forced them to align with one another. Maybe I'm wrong. It's just kind of a theory. But now you start to like Bill Maher, for example. I'm not a fan of Bill Maher, most of Bill Maher's opinions, but there's a few things I'm completely on board with him. And the fact that he at least is one of those people, I think, who's trying to climb out of the progressive echo chamber and pull some people with him and going back to being a corrupt liberal I disagree with, but whatever, we'll disagree. But at least we respect one another. Trudeau's using Canada's social engineering experiment. Behavioral economics is what's behind all of this. His alliance to the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and the 2030 IPCC. I think there's something to that. I think the World Economic Forum at this point doesn't have the power that they wish they have and that they wanted people to perceive that they have. I mean, it's just a money laundering and bribery scheme. That's all it is, right? And it's now getting to the point where they're becoming a pariah amongst many politicians. I mean, you saw I hope he adheres to it, but Pierre Poilievre said on the campaign tour that he will ban any of his caucus members from participating in the World Economic Forum. Will he do it? I hope so. I don't know. But at least it's a step in the right direction, right? At least that's now part of the conversation. So I think we're going in the right direction. Camille says, my husband immigrating from Czech Republic. He was the first to alert me to progressive code word communism. Yeah, the people who are, I can put these comments up here. The people who really get it are people from Eastern Europe. People from Eastern Europe do not have short memories, and they remember what was going on in Europe just a few decades ago. And I think that's really what's going to help save the West. And there were so many truckers that were from Eastern Europe who participated in the Freedom Convoy. I know a lot of Polish truckers, and yeah, they get it. Like, they know exactly what's going on, to the point that some of them are like, I think maybe I should go back to Poland. And it's not so fast. Not so fast. I think we're going to I think we're going to win. And David says, correct. They are corrupt ideological politicians on both sides of the political spectrum. There's corruption everywhere, dude, and that's when I start to say, have people put thoughts into who sabotaged the convoy. For people who are new here, because I'm streaming on the National Telegraph for the first time, hello everybody from TNT. I've been leading people down this path to consider if and how and who sabotaged the Freedom Convoy. When we were in Ottawa, there was a whole bunch of different groups and different people who thought they're in charge. And every day we're calling their own press conferences that, the problem is, and this guy who I talked about earlier, Jeremy McKenzie, that's why you need to have at least some semblance of centralized messaging and consistent messaging. It's because of people like that. And that's what we were dealing with in Ottawa, which was people like that constantly calling their own press conferences, or that idiot in the picture with him for the thumbnail, Hillier, who was, I explained this the other day, he'd be, befriending truckers on the street or volunteers or road captains or whatever. And he'd say, these people don't know anything about media. I'm Randy Hillier. I'm a member of provincial parliament. We need to have a press conference. You know what? I know people in the media. If you're willing to do a press conference, I'll call the media and set up a press conference. He's doing something like that. At least that's what I was told. And listen, you're a guy. It's freezing cold. You're part of this movement. You want political change. And here's this guy who sells you on the idea he's actually a politician who didn't show up for work, but that's another point, and says, I can be the one to sell the message. Like, yeah, okay, I can do it, which is a trap. And if you don't have any sort of media training, then you wouldn't know it's a trap. And that's what he was doing to us. But anyways, when I talk about sabotaging the Freedom Convoy, I'm not talking about him. He was just a useless barfly. And it is what it is. But anyways, so I hope I've given you guys enough context and some ideas. And all of these things, we go into these spaces and I talk about how we frame things from the positive perspective, even though we're going to talk about sometimes negative things. World Economic Forum, that's something that's negative. But I think the positive frame is, I think things are starting to change. And more and more people like yourself, David, are putting pressure in the political zeitgeist. And that's the only thing politicians respond to, money or pressure. And there's a significant amount of pressure now that's coming from everybody who is speaking openly and honestly, because we still have some semblance of freedom of speech that we need to cradle like it's our child and protect it at all costs. And I think we're all going to do that. And I think the tide has turned. And the tide turned, in my opinion, at the Freedom Convoy, and I could see it when every news agency from just about every country in the world was emailing me for an interview or to come on or whatever. And that's another thing for people who are watching on the National Telegraph. We did our first press conference, and after the first press conference, Rebel Media called me. They didn't show up. They were late. They had some problem, miscommunication, the email, whatever it was. And they said, can we do an interview with you? And I said, you know what? Sure. We'll make it. Rebel Media will be the one that has the exclusive interview. So we sat there. I wasted an hour of my time. It was myself and Tamara. And this is not a criticism of Lincoln and Alexandra. Like, they're amazing. They're wonderful. And Mocha. So we sat there with the three of them, did a full long interview. All of us in our full context that the mainstream media or legacy media could have gotten absolutely everything. It was the first weekend in our full context. And Ezra spiked the story. He didn't air it. Why would you do that? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's the #1 story in the world was the Freedom Convoy that weekend. Every news agency in the world was trying to get us for an interview. I gave it to Rebel Media, and Ezra spiked the story. I still don't have an answer for that. And maybe there's some logical reason for that. I don't know. But it probably would have done a lot of good in terms of shielding the Freedom Convoy from the smears that were inevitably going to come from the legacy media, which is why I wanted to give Rebel Media that interview, but they didn't do it. So I don't know. Anyways, it is what it is. I think everything is going to work out. Please, the book will be coming out. Check out honkingforfreedom.locals.com. Like, share, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, BJD.online, BJD online, so my initials and online is my YouTube channel. You can subscribe there, on Instagram as well, which seems to be picking up a little bit here and there. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I hope all of this helps. And I also just wanted to, the other thing when I discussed some of these people that were, as I described it, the useful idiots, I personally don't have any ill will to them. I don't have any ill will towards anything, any of them, anyone. I hope they get themselves sorted and maybe see the light and understand that you can't just go down on being angry every moment of your day. It's better to focus on peace, love, freedom, and unity. Okay, I gotta run.